From time to time, our owners ask me about approach speeds on our airplanes. And the biggest question I always get is, do we always have to approach slow? And I said, no, you don't. You can at a bigger airport, you can approach fast, fit in with the faster traffic. The thing I always do is I associate the flap setting with my approach speed, anticipated approach speed. So if I'm over at Wichita and I'm sandwiched in between a couple of jets and they ask me to keep my speed up, I leave the flaps up for my approach. And as long as I don't have to lose a lot of altitude on final, I can come down final indicating 110, 115 without any problem, gradually slow up as I near the runway threshold, and then I land without flaps at a higher speed. The landings, though, are always full stall landings because, especially on the King Katmais, we've got those really big bush wheels and it takes a little bit to spool them up. So I still like a slow touchdown, even from a fast approach, but it makes no sense to me to come in on a fast approach with 20 degrees of flaps down and then have even more lift that you have to dissipate floating down the runway. So kind of tailor the flap usage, for the anticipated approach. On a normal approach with our airplanes, whether it's a 260 SE, a Katmai, or a Kenai, generally, for the guys I'm checking out here, to keep it simple, I figure flaps up 80 knots, flaps 10 degrees of flaps at 70 knots, 20 degrees at 60 knots, and then the flap settings beyond 20 degrees are really all drag, no reduction in stall speed, so 60 knots is the normal low. On short field approaches, 60 and above is just too fast. You've got too much float to get it in short. So consequently on the short field approaches, usually what I'll run is 20 degrees of flaps unless there's an obstacle or a need for more. And I'll come down final, stabilized approach, probably about 60, plan on crossing over the edge of the strip, maybe like at 55. And at 55 over the edge of the strip, you're slow enough to get in most anywhere. I see guys that get all excited trying to get into a strip in Idaho or Utah that's maybe 1,800 feet long, and they're coming in way too slow on final. They don't need to be that slow. So just remember that 55 with 20 to 40 degrees of flaps will give you an approach that will get you into almost any strip. Now occasionally I'll come in slower, and these Katmais can be flown as slow as 45 knots. But the issue is, as you get really slow, the amount of lift and energy you have gets really small. So you have to be way ahead of the airplane and anticipate what's going on. I don't really worry about anybody ever stalling the aircraft on final because it's a nice, safe, flat attitude, but it's a big, heavy airplane, so the slower you get, the more sink you get, and you've got to be ahead. The sink isn't all bad because a lot of times we can use it to come in over an obstacle or down a hillside. So the big thing I always say is remember the flap setting relative to the anticipated speed on final, and you'll be fine.